Eventually figure it out. Process of elimination.
Great minds.
That's really weird. Nobody breathe.
Well, I was just about to say, so whenever we do a podcast, we always have to make sure I don't have a nose whistle. Yep.
Really makes editing a pain. Yeah. So just give me a mic check.
Hello.
Crispy chicken.
Hello.
All right. Well, looks like all the gremlins have been worked out. All right. Well, howdy, folks, and welcome to a very special Lifestyle Overland podcast. What we were calling this thing, Campfire Confessions. That's actually the title of the podcast.
Yeah.
And it's been a minute since we've done one, and we've never done one with special guests. So joining us today on this podcast is Antony and Emma of We Will Roam. And just letting you know, they're one of my favorite YouTube channels, even though they haven't posted in a while, but they still are doing incredible work. And so I'm looking forward to sitting down and chatting with them now. Just to set the story, we've actually been on the road with them for, how long has it been? 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Time flies, eh?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it just seems like yesterday we were loading all the rigs up to head out. But we've had quite the adventure with a wide range of ups and downs, which we'll get into as we chat. But really excited to have you guys here.
No, thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
And I didn't realize we were your first special guests either.
That's it?
Yeah, we talk big game. We were like, we'll get with those people, we'll do it. And we never do. So we should really pat ourselves on the back for actually making this happen tonight.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because, we were all ready to go to bed because it's been a long haul, very long haul. But let's start with you, Emma. Where are you from originally?
Originally from the UK. Grew up in a little small town. And then, when did we meet? When we were early 20s. We met at work.
Mm-hmm.
And moved to Australia when I was, I want to say 25. I feel like I always get that wrong. I just sometimes don't know my age.
Just last year, wasn't it, love?
But yeah. Such a short time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, grew up in the UK, small town. I have a family of 5, so I'm the middle child. I have an older sister and a younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, grew up, loved being outdoors, going out camping with the family. So yeah, lived a pretty nice little life in the UK.
Awesome. And you, Ann?
Me? I was born in the US. Not that the accent would give that away.
No, especially when you say where in the US you were born.
Yeah, Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And then, but did a lot of growing up in Tennessee. So somewhere at home are some little videotapes. My mum used to have a tape recorder. Somewhere in the house are these videotapes, and I've got like a blonde mushroom cut and a real southern twang. And they shall never see the light of day.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
Man.
If I have anything to do with it,
Emma's
they
going to
will.
go find them for us.
Oh, yeah.
Challenge accepted.
Yes.
Challenge accepted.
But we left the US when I was young, like before I was 10, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So moved around a fair bit as a kid. Did a lot of growing up in the UK, went to uni in the UK, in the north in Sheffield, and then moved down to a town called Reading outside London, and that's where I met Emma. We met in a lift. So
all right,
the only way was up.
Oh gosh.
I have made that joke before.
You have,
fair,
yeah.
So it's polished.
Oh, yeah. Delivery was on point.
Yeah. But so that's where we met. We met at work.
So how do you meet in an elevator? And then, did you just ask her out right then and there?
Oh, you're giving me way too much credit for that.
Because I'm like, how does that even happen?
Right.
Because in an elevator, I don't know how it is in the UK. In America, you don't make eye contact. You don't talk to anybody in the elevator.
That was that. So when I went into the lift, they were the rules. I was looking at the ground.
Okay.
Emma changed the rules, eh?
All right, Emma.
I feel like I'm going to have to tell the story now.
Yeah. Go for it.
So, because you're right. Usually when you get into an elevator, you're focused, you're going somewhere.
Yeah. It's a small space. You don't want to make anything awkward.
Sure. So I was at work and I was talking to a colleague of mine and I'd been looking for And this was back in the time where, you know, there were emails and you had kind of Messenger and stuff, but you didn't often know exactly what everyone looked like. Whereas now everyone's got pictures on their Messenger and things like that. So I've been looking for this guy called Neil, and I happened to be just standing with my friend Jake at the time, and I'd said to him, like, I'm looking for this guy called Neil. He's not replying to my emails. Like, I'm looking for this person. And he said, oh, there he is, down there. And we were standing at the top of like an atrium, so kind of I was a few floors up and looking down. So I thought, great, I'll go and now I know what he looks like. I'll go and chat to him. So later that day, I get into a lift and in comes Ant. Beknownst to me, Jake had been pointing at someone who I took as Ant, basically the wrong person.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
Ant gets into the lift and it gets better. Neil, the reason he hadn't been replying to me is he'd just come back off paternity leave. So Ant gets in the lift, and before I ask him what I want to ask him, I'm like, how's the baby?
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah. And if we take a step back, it was a technology company, so, you know, software nerd. So firstly, I was panicked because a girl is talking to me. What do I do? Secondly, she asked me, how's the baby? I'm like, whoa, what?
This is moving way too
It's
fast.
just like, what is happening?
So yeah, Ant looked I could tell from his face. And then, yeah, I basically was like, you're not Neil, are you? And he's like, no.
Nope.
And yeah, the rest is history. And then we just started chatting and actually, so we then started to go for like tea and coffee together because there was a little cafe on the campus we worked on. And it was funny at the time, you know, Ant would buy a tea with me, but then I figured out he wasn't drinking it. He doesn't like tea,
I like tea.
but he kept going.
I liked Emma, but I did not like tea.
Oh my gosh.
So we go for tea together. I drink my tea. Ant would not drink his. And yeah, that's where we
my
met.
gosh.
And then here we are now.
Here we are.
Well,
So-
that's delightful.
So I need to back up just a minute. How did you transition from asking him about his baby to you guys like, hey, let's go have a tea, which I dislike, but I'll pretend to like for you?
Yeah. Emma found out who I was, found me in the email list, like the global address list, and then she sent me an email saying, hey, I'm really sorry. That was very awkward.
Oh, okay.
Like,
okay.
You know, can
Explaining
I get you tea?
herself. Yeah.
Gotcha.
As a,
okay.
you know, and so I was like, yeah, sure. And then we started talking about travel. Emma had been, you just got back from, was it China or Thailand? I can't remember.
One of the two.
But
Yeah.
yeah, we started chatting about travel and where we'd want to go and what we want to do. And yeah, then it just sort of hit it off, eh?
Yeah, we also bonded over music. We have a
Oh,
similar
yeah.
taste in music. So, and yeah, then we just started catching up and going to gigs together and
Nice.
inseparable now.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
So fast forwarding, when did you guys decide to move to Australia?
Also a fun story.
So, having been born in the US and having a lot of childhood memories in the US, I always assumed that one day I'd move back. I just had this affinity with the place, I guess. And as we have discussed, most of my childhood memories are all food related.
Yes.
You know,
Mhm.
ice cream and the good stuff.
Moon pies.
Moon pies.
Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I have to say, being a Tennessee boy, listening to someone with your accent and like reminiscing about moon pies is like really
Yeah,
a
man.
mind screw. Like
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
figure that one out.
All aboard the Chattanooga choo-choo, hey.
And Dollywood.
Yeah.
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 It's
Oh,
been
man.
it's been interesting.
But because of that, I've got this real nostalgia for the place. So I always assumed we would move back, or I would move back.
Right.
Emma had a friend, wonderful, wonderful bloke called Joel, from a previous role, and that's where I'll hand over to you if you want to tell the rest.
Yeah, so Joel, my friend who had met at work previously before I'd met Ant, he'd moved out to Australia. And we were just chatting, and you and I had only been together
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
And Joel was like, you've got to come out to Australia for my birthday. And I was like, that's a pretty big trip. I've never been that far before. And I chatted to Ant about it, and we were like, why not, kind of thing. Never been there.
Right.
So we went over, and it was the Australian summer, so it was in December. And we flew into Melbourne, had birthday with Joel. We then drove to Sydney together as a group, did New Year's. It was just an amazing trip. And then Ant and I drove back from Sydney to Melbourne and then flew home to the UK. And as Ant has mentioned, you know, we'd bonded over the fact that we'd like to both move international, like do, you know, whether it was work abroad for a year or do something.
Mm-hmm.
And we both just fell in love with Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Such an amazing country. So then there was this sort of like joke when we got back was who's going to get the job first? Because it was like, well, it'd be handy visa wise if we could get a job first. And at the time, I was actually contracting at the company we both worked at. So it was more feasible in my mind that Ant would get kind of the full-time transfer from same company, just different country.
Gotcha.
So we came back from Australia and I said, I'm the 45%. I'll come with you, but you're going to have to get the job. And fast forward 4 months, I got a full-time role in the UK and then got offered a job to move to do my same job but in Melbourne.
Wow.
What?
So it was this like funny, you know, I'm just 45%, I'll come along kind of thing. And then I was like, oh, I got the job.
That's
I
it.
win.
Yeah.
And it all went very, very quickly. It was very much one of those things where it was just an amazing opportunity. The guy who I'd been working with, he was essentially doing the same job as me in Melbourne as I was doing in the UK. And he said to me, I'm actually leaving the company and moving to the US. Do you want me to suggest you for my job in Melbourne? And yeah, it just went from there. So
Wow.
got sponsored and we both moved to Australia.
So what was
Within
it?
just a year of being together?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, we ended up moving maybe 18
I
months
think
mark,
it was about 18
Okay.
months, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Still.
gotcha. What was it about Australia that made you go, we got to be here?
The weather was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
The culture, we just loved the city of Melbourne.
Yeah.
It just felt quite European. And we already always had friends there as well. As I said, my friend Joel lived there, and he introduced us to all his friends when we were there, and it felt like a very easy culture. Everyone's very relaxed. You know, no one's sort of rushing into work. They're kind of making time for themselves before work and after work, and whether it's family or hobbies. I don't know, there was just a certain... I remember saying to Ant, it was just a feeling. We just felt very at home there.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was just exciting. So it was also an unknown,
Right.
but very much, I think we'll like it here.
Yeah.
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 And I think for me, I didn't know this at the time, but in hindsight, all I really wanted to do was go traveling. That's all I actually wanted to do.
Mm.
And then when we went to Australia and we had like a 3.5 week holiday, there was a real taste of, wow, there's a lot to see. You know, there's a lot, like, this is a big place and we could go and do lots of new things and explore lots of new places, and it felt very unknown and very adventurous. And so for me, that was an aspect of it too.
Gotcha.
And quick side note, the car that we rented to drive back from Melbourne to Sydney was a VW Passat. And we have this in common where we like to connect roads and routes and tracks. And if we can take the long way around and go through this little wiggly bit, right, let's give it a go to see how we go. Anyway, we did not return that VW Passat in the same condition in which we picked it up because we fanged it around what we now know to be the Snowies and the Victoria High Country. Took it down some dirt tracks.
Wow.
Wouldn't do that
We
again.
wouldn't do that again.
Not in that car.
But so we got a taste of the mountains in this little VW
Oh,
that
wow.
we probably shouldn't have taken down.
All right.
Down those tracks.
Wow.
So there was like a little taste there of what was to come.
Gotcha.
Wow.
So, I mean, you've chatted about, growing up camping, in some of the campgrounds in the UK and things like that, and you camped in Tennessee and with your family and stuff. At what point when you got to Australia were you like, hey, what's all these Troopies running around and these, these trucks that are all decked out. When did you go, hey, that might be kind of fun?
We probably have two different answers for this, eh?
Well, again, coming from the UK and the kind of camping that we did, I'd never really seen vehicle style travel or vehicle style camping. It was very much picture tent, or you'd go to, something was kind of like a caravan park. You'd rent a caravan that was already there, and that was kind of camping kind of thing. That's what I remember anyway. And then, again, we'd only been in Australia for a couple of months. And Ant starts pointing out these vehicles. Like, oh,
Do you see that?
see that one?
Okay.
That looks cool.
Yeah.
And in my sort of typical, we've just moved here. We don't need one of those. What are we going to do with that sort of thing? It's funny looking back now. But then Ant was like, can we just go and see a couple of these Troopies? I was like, yeah, okay, we'll do that. So I went to see a couple. And again, I was kind of on the fence. It was a big investment. We'd just moved there. It all just felt like a lot, in terms of, do we need to like add something else to our life? And we did go and see one, and I thought they were very cool, and it had like a camping setup in the back already and all that sort of, and it was just very fascinating. It was just very different. You want to tell the rest of the story?
It's going to be interesting. Okay. Meanwhile, back in Antony's brain.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, she's like, oh, that's cool. That is tacit approval right there, because it was not a no. It was a, hey, they're pretty cool. Nice.
Gotcha.
It's got a V8, and it's got camping stuff in the back. There was a place down in a town called Pakenham, hour and a half, sort of southeast of Melbourne, and they sold a bunch of ex-rental and ex-government stuff. So they had single cab Land Cruisers, double cab Land Cruisers, ex-rental Troopies, heaps of ex-rental Hiace vans, Toyota Hiaces.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in 2016 when van life, as it was on the internet, was sort of starting to explode. And I was like looking at the vans, and I was looking at the Troopy, and really getting into it. Anyway, so I think it was the exact Troopy that we now have. Mm-hmm. That was the one that Emma said, well, that's pretty cool. I quite like that one.
Okay.
It's all right, that one. So I drive it home one day, unbeknownst to Emma.
Not as a test drive. But
Not as I've been down twice, and I'd test driven it, and I'd had a good look at it, and it was super clean, high mileage because it was ex-rental, but well looked after. And I thought, you know what, let's do it, and I'll surprise her, and we'll go out, we'll go camp on a beach somewhere, as the Aussies do, and it'll be great. And to soften the blow, on the way home, bought some flowers.
Which I will add, it's not usual. and therefore,
when you saw
something's happened.
Right.
Yeah.
It's good or bad, or a mix. It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got home from work. There were the flowers, and also sort of like a little fanned out, pieces of paper. Kind of like I bought something kind of thing, or something's on the paper. And obviously it happened to be the fact they'd bought the Troopy. And that was
you were overjoyed, weren't you?
Going back now.
That sounds like something Kevin would do.
Yeah.
He's like you in that if I don't say no, then he's like, shoe in.
I think I can count on one hand how many times she said no, though. So she's very much an enabler.
I am.
I can't say I recommend the method of, look, just bring it home. I
don't think I'd recommend that.
I don't think I'd recommend it.
That was a couple of really, good relationship tests, moving to another country and then showing up with the Troopy, so the fact that you're still here that's impressive. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Trial by fire and Troopy.
That's it.
I feel like as well, and maybe it's just my personality, it was one of those things where I kind of didn't want him to know that I was like excited about it, kind of thing, because it was a surprise. So I was a bit grumpy for a while, and then I was like, okay, this is fun.
All right.
Just
And-
enough to save face, long enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't ever do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then that's it. We just absolutely fell in love with the Troopy. And I mean, traveling Australia, I mean, it's just the accessibility to places and the different places you can take these vehicles. It was just so new to us and just really exciting. And it was fun. We'd go on little day trips at the weekend, kind of before we did any long trips. And I loved the feeling of everything being new, like, because it was new country to us,
Right.
also a new style of travel. Everything just felt like so fun and so new. It was awesome.
Where was the first place you took it?
Wilson's Prom, hey.
Yeah, we camped down at a little place called Yanaki.
Yeah. And it was a supermoon that night.
Ooh.
And so we're sat, like, Yanaki's sort of on the coast. And it was a really dark night, and then the moon started rising from across the bay. And I was like, what is that? Like, is it on fire? And then this massive red moon rose, and it was pretty magical.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
It was
That's a
pretty
sign.
A
magic.
little confirmation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, the classic stuff, like kookaburras laughing in the distance and
Oh, man.
wallabies hopping around, and
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
A very
I can't
Aussie
even
experience.
imagine.
Oh, my gosh. One day we will. But,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So, weekend trips and sort of day trips, and when did longer format travel start to come into play? And how did that play with your jobs? I mean, were you doing longer term stuff while you were working, or did you actually step back?
At the time, and particularly for our jobs, remote working wasn't really a thing. This was back in mid 2016. So really, it was only if you took leave, took holiday. And that's pretty much what we spent our holiday doing. We didn't go overseas or anything, apart from if we needed to go back to the UK. Pretty much our leave was to go and travel in the Troopy. So that's sort of how we started. And then we also started watching YouTube, because we'd then look up, these other people traveling, and that's how we found your channel. So I think us just wanting to do new things and taking leave from work, and also seeing what all these other people were doing in Australia and other countries, we're like, oh wow, like, you could go away for a whole 2 weeks. like it was
It doesn't
just,
have to be one night.
yeah. So I think our biggest trip was the Flenders, right?
Yeah, that was the real catalyst.
Yeah.
So the Flinders Ranges, which I think are probably Tassie is close to my heart, but I think the Flinders Ranges is got some magic about it. So it's 100% on your waypoints when you get over. But we took a trip to the Flinders Ranges, and it was our first taste of sort of dry, dusty, way out there Australia. It's like ancient rock formations. Wilpena Pound is this sort of ancient mountain that's been eroded away, and the light is insane when the sun starts to go down. Everything's orange and yellow, and it's just a real pretty place. And it was an 12-hour drive
Yeah, I think so.
away. We stopped overnight in a place called Tarawi. I don't know how to say it, but turns out that's where, I'm going to get this wrong, but General MacArthur, I think it was, did his speech when he retreated out of the Philippines or something like that. It was just some like historic moment in World War II history. Now it's a ghost town. There's nothing, like, very little there.
Wow.
So it's sort of a bit of a time capsule. So we left Melbourne in our very metropolitan existence, and we'd driven for hours and hours and hours and hours, and we camped overnight in this old railway yard in this ghost town, and then got up the next day and moved off and went into this sort of extraterrestrial landscape, red rocks and mountains everywhere, and we just had a great time. We just had a great time, like starry skies, adventurous tracks, like some real fun four-wheel drive, some real self-sufficient stuff too. We took all the water we needed and all the food, and just had a great time. And I think we spent the whole 12-hour drive home essentially planning how are we going to go do this? Like, how are we going to go traveling long term?
Yeah.
Back to your question that was the catalyst. That trip specifically was
Okay.
like, how do we do this? Do we save up? Do we try and get some other sort of job? What do we do?
But there's this one road through the ranges that you then kind of turn off to, basically, to go into the national park or kind of carry on into the middle of nowhere. So when we came out of the ranges, it was left back to Melbourne or right. And that was such an interesting moment for us. We knew we had to go home because of work, but we just sort of sat at that junction and were like,
Could turn left and go like
Oh,
off into
yeah.
the middle.
Oh, yeah.
you know, so those are always really interesting moments where you're sort of, you know, those decisions can completely change your life. But yeah, that's when we started to say, right, we're going to need to save and see how we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the plan at that point? Was it to save up a lump sum and just and have a cutoff and then run until that ran dry and then go back to work? Was that kind of the plan, or when did YouTube come into this piece?
That's a great question. So we had been doing YouTube videos at the same time. Very similar to yourself. Part of it was about sharing what we were up to and where we were going.
Yeah.
Like, so much of it felt like newness. It felt like new experiences and adventures. We wanted to share that with people back home. So there was an intent in that aspect. For me as a geek, I wanted something to make music to, like a purpose, I guess, for the songs that I made or the music that I wrote. And so these two things came together. I could make little tunes and then put images and video over the top of it, and here are some of the adventures we went on, and that's sort of how the YouTube thing really came about.
Well, the first video that you made was us moving to Australia. So it actually was pre-Troopy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We'll have to
Okay.
show it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it on YouTube or?
No, I think
no,
I think it's off now.
Okay.
I think that's one of those like, wow, that was like the first one.
Right.
And now it's like, we're probably a bit embarrassed to like share it.
Yeah. But in fact, do you remember when you got the news of your visa approval? I was down in the living room making music for that first episode.
Wow.
And then she came. It was like 1 a.m. I
Yeah,
couldn't
was it-
sleep. So I was
Yeah.
downstairs on the
Yeah.
kitchen table making music, and she came down and was like, we got approved. We're going.
It was at like 1 a.m. We were at my mum's house and we were like packing and stuff, just
Yeah.
waiting for this approval to come through so we could get on our flight. Yeah, it was wild. But that's the video, or the YouTube really started purely from making music and wanting to put something to it. And that was pre-Troopy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's an important rabbit trail.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get how did you get into music, and what kind of led you to writing all these pieces of work that are in every video that you make, right? So you make a video and then you write all the music for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't process compliments very well, so thank you. I'll just get that
This will
out.
be a theme.
I'm proud of you for
Yeah.
even saying thank you.
Thank
You could
you.
have just ignored it and kept talking. So good job. You're processing.
So when Emma said earlier that she always loved being outside as a kid, I was very opposite. I was an indoor kid. In fact, I was a bedroom guitarist, like from the age of 14 or 13. And I went to a boarding school as a kid for a little while, and one of my dorm mates had a guitar, a little old Squire Strat. He didn't play it. And so one of the ways you could get out of the compulsory hour a day of homework time was if you went and did music practice. And so little old me was like, well, there's a guitar. I'll have a go at that, and then I
Right.
won't have to sit downstairs in the dining hall doing my homework for an hour every night. And I just fell in love with it. At the time, what was that? It was Green Day, Muse, Deftones. Like, that was the flavor of the Queens of the Stone Age. That was the sort of flavor of the era. And my love of the guitar just sort of grew from there. So that's where it started. And then throughout my teenage years, even at university, I was inside a lot making music, because at the same time, the ability to make music at home on your laptop or on my old desktop PC, like technology was improving and it was getting better and it was getting easier to sort of do some of these things. So I've probably been making music, since I was 13 or 14.
That's awesome.
That's
awesome. I mean, I started playing guitar about the same time that you did, but it was always just learning how to play it and play other songs. I always wanted to be one of those guys that could actually write something new, but I just never got traction there. So whenever I come across someone like that, it's just like, man, just that creative piece is an incredible thing.
Yeah, thanks, man. And there's a few less glamorous pieces to it too, where firstly I wanted to make the music, but then also conveniently I wouldn't have any copyright issues if it was mine.
True.
When you're making stuff for YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Thirdly, music services didn't really exist back then, and so finding something that matched the sort of vibe you were going for wasn't easy. So I thought, well, I'll just make it.
Wow.
So all these things sort of came together over the years, and that's how we ended up with our little sort of style.
The interesting thing about you making music, though, is that, again, the music comes first. So Anne always has music in mind before we've filmed.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we're going somewhere or we're doing, a particular trip, and already knows the style and the sound.
Yeah.
It's kind of the other way around, rather than we've filmed and then trying to add music. Like he already has it, and that's what I just find so impressive.
Yeah.
Is it's already in his head.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really special.
Well, I just got to say, for everyone out there who's never seen your channel, and I've said this since we found you guys, it's completely underrated. I mean, the algorithm, be damned. I mean,
it doesn't like us.
It's truly phenomenal. I mean, I get chills when I watch it, and just the music is an incredible tapestry of a backdrop, and you can see the care and the attention and the way you take the vibe of what you're traveling through and create it into song so that it merges perfectly. But the icing on the cake is your commentary to each other. I mean, I was thinking about this as we were driving back today, and I was like, your commentary is the definition of romance.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh,
nice.
I am romantic.
It's so good. It's so good. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there because it when we sat down and watched some of your episodes that you're doing for the EXO Creator Series, it was truly a flashback to when we first started watching your channel, and I like literal chills.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
just literal chills. It was really, really spectacular, and you have this 3-piece chemistry of amazing camera work, incredible music, and then just your relationship as that steady drum beat as to why you're out there and where you're going, and it's just a work of art.
Well, and the thing is like when you're talking about the relationship, it's not over the top.
No.
It's not in your face. It's so like intimate and like, and just like, what's the word? Not mild, but like, I guess intimate is the only one I can think of.
It's authentic.
Yeah.
It's just authentic.
It's not showboaty and.
Well, and it's, I mean, definitely some of my early episodes, some of the voiceover is a little over the top. I mean, I was still learning how to communicate the emotions of the moments that we traveled in, but yours just has this simplistic beauty that is just small little commentary about what you're traveling through and its beauty, and then like how it affects you, and then how it affects you as a couple. And it's just a beautiful thing to literally be like inside your mind. That's what you feel like.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're just kind of seeing it through your eyes and then having these same conversations. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I think, I'd definitely describe it as, I mean, I can be an introvert, extrovert, although I kind of sway more to the introvert most of the time. Ant's definitely an introvert. So I think our style naturally is quite introverted in the way that we want to communicate. I think the thing that I've always really enjoyed as well is that the reason outside of making it for family, when we started really enjoying creating, was it was all around our experience together. And kind of keeping that sort of fourth wall around. It's just kind of like a small window into what we're doing, but not everything that we're thinking and everything that we're talking about. And I think it's important for us to, or I feel it's always been important for us to think about, it's our emotion, how do we feel in these places, and being able to convey that. For me, ants always struggle with this. I love watching them all back because it's the memories and the emotions. You've come a long way to watching your own work, haven't you? But I really enjoy that it's our experience together.
Last thing I'll say on this too is in the early days, so back in 2016, 2017, I feel like there was this euphoria about sharing all these experiences. Van life was exploding. Overlanding was kicking off, you know. And we used to binge you guys. Who else? Like Ronnie Dahl,
Live Wet
Andrew
Wonder,
St. Pierre White,
Jess
Live Wet
Malloy.
Wonder. Like we'd watch these people that were doing it. Like they were out there living it. And I aspired to that, but I didn't have any experience. Another way of saying it is I didn't feel like I had any interesting to say. So this sort of style developed from that, is in like, well, we could have an experience together with each other, but I didn't have any wisdom to impart on any broader outside world. And so I didn't feel compelled to sort of address anyone outside of us. You know, we're doing it for us, and this is the experience we're having. But I didn't really feel like I had any confidence or wisdom to like address another audience outside of that.
Gotcha.
So I think like that definitely played a part in the early days.
Well, I think that's what makes it so good.
So good.
So real. I mean, you look at some of the other channels and you can tell they're trying so hard. You know, it's just kind of this awkward, squeamish, you know, moment. But then you watch one of your videos and you're like, I just went on a ride with these guys and they're really cool. And I hope one day I'd love to meet them. And then here you are, dadgummit.
So wild.
It is wild, isn't it?
I mean, we're talking about what, 8 years roughly. And we chatted on Instagram off and on, here and there, and on Patreon and things like that. And so, it's just an amazing world that we live in, that we as people can go and have this experience and film it and share it in whatever style is ours, and connect with people across the world, literally on the other side of the world. And that's by far, you know, when people ask me, what do I love most about doing this? You know, a trail is a trail, a vehicle is a vehicle, a mountain is a mountain, trees are trees, like, and they're beautiful. But really, the thing that I love most about it is meeting people like yourselves and the relationships that come from that, and the stories that you get to hear. You know, that's my favorite part about all of this. And so it's really cool to see, 8-9 years of, this kind of back and forth and, mutual appreciation of each other's work, and then to finally come full circle. So
what a time to be alive, eh?
Yeah,
I know.
So
for
wild.
all the negative things about social media, and we talked about this around the campfire a few times, is just, it is what you make of it. And you can definitely go down the wormhole of, feeling inferior and feeling like you're not, I don't know, meeting up to the world standards. But there's another aspect of it, that if you invest time and appreciation of other people's work, you just never know, what kind of relationship and friendship can spawn from that. And this is, one of those highlights, one of those amazing pieces of what social media has done. So back to kind of where we got off trail just a little bit. So you decided, all right, this is for us.
Yep.
What did that time frame look like? How long did you have to save up before you said, let's go?
When did we set up our travel fund? I always like it when you can call an account the travel fund.
I want to say, was it 2018 or 2019?
I think it was early 2018.
Yeah.
And then I think we gave ourselves
4 years. I've still got the spreadsheet, you know.
Of course.
love a good spreadsheet. But I think we had a 4-year plan, didn't we?
originally.
Yeah.
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 It didn't end up being 4 years.
It didn't end up being 4 years.
Nobody wants to wait 4 years.
No.
No.
That's
silly,
so long.
silly plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to say it, or do you want to say it?
Yeah. I think it was early 2018 when we kind of, it was after that Flenders trip that we were like, right.
Okay.
We need to,
Yeah.
you know, stop spending money out on breakfast because Australia's big brunch culture.
Right.
So if I could go out for avocado toast every day, and there's this joke in Australia that if you stop buying avocado toast, you can afford to buy a house. Load of rubbish, but the point still stands.
Right.
That we needed to stop spending money on things. So it was really nice to have something to focus on, and really, quite frankly, quite fun to focus on that, knowing that there was this sort of really exciting goal in mind, and there were different things we wanted to do to the Troopy. So we knew we needed a little bit of time. But yeah, I think it was 2018 that we started saving, and originally it was a 4-year plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And then in 2019, we mentioned earlier on, we worked for a technology company, and restructures happen all the time. Yeah. These days it's almost annual, whereas back then it was sort of a 2-year, maybe 3-year cycle. And so, one of us got the tap on the shoulder saying, "Hey, we've made some changes. This team isn't gonna be around in next financial year, and so here's a couple options on the table for you." We were fortunate to work in the same office still, and so we went downstairs to the coffee shop around the corner. And
did you have coffee that time or tea?
I had coffee that time. Long black.
Listen. He got it. He got it. So now he can have whatever beverage he wants.
That's it. Yeah. I was in the clear.
He's locked in.
Yeah.
And I was like, "This is it. This is it.
It's our sign.
This is it's a sign. It's an opportunity. If we look at the spreadsheet, you could continue to work for another 12, 18 months to get to the same point, or you know what, we could just pull the pin now. I know it's early. I know that we haven't quite, hit the number, but
So it was me that got tapped on the shoulder, and I remember vividly sort of knowing that it was going to be an option, because it was for others too. It wasn't just myself. It was a big restructure, and we had a very brief chat just before it all kind of happened. And I remember being in the meeting where it happened and almost having to hide the smirk on my face.
The yes.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal. Like it was, I'd never been through something like that before.
Sure.
And I guess because I was being given options too. But I also had this sort of thing in the back of my mind going, I could just get in the Troopy and drive away.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, when it happened, we then had that conversation and said, well, now's as good as time as any. It's giving us this opportunity to go and do what we wanted to do, but just earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we would have been crazy to not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was another catalyst.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. A little nudge, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Nudge in the right direction. And so I worked for a few more months, and then also handed my notice in, and then we ended up leaving home November 2019. So there was it was only like 2 or 3 months of sort of actually like prep, like,
Gotcha.
okay, well, if we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. We would better get sorted.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we had 2 or 3 months from having that coffee chat to saying, all right, this is it, let's do it, to then actually shoving off and getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So at that point, Was the Troopy pretty much ready for that kind of travel, or did you have to put, some effort into re-outfitting or more longer travel?
By that point, so the Troopy is ex-rental. So when we bought her, she had a functional but pretty clunky setup in the back, a functional but not greatly engineered pop top, fiberglass pop top with these scissor hinges that would just seize all the time. Anyway, sidetrack. But so by the time 2019 rolled around, we'd replaced a few things. She had a lift, she had a locker in the rear, a whole 12-volt system fitted. We didn't have a water tank, so that was like, right, well, let's sort that out. That was one of the things on the list. We didn't have a big enough fridge. We had a little 32-liter one from the rental days, and so we swapped that out for a much bigger one, and we'd had a different camping setup put in the back. We had a set of drawers and like a U shape of benches that we could put a board in the middle of and sort of sleep downstairs, as we called it, instead of up in the pop top, because the pop top was almost less than a single bed, right? Like it wasn't very comfortable to sleep in.
So when we first got the Troopy, it's actually hilarious for me to admit this, but when we were trying to figure out the sleeping situation, because the pop top had those sort of slide-in wooden boards that you had to kind of slide in and then kind of put a really terrible sort of mattress
pad
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
But it was so tiny up there. But downstairs, I love how we call the upstairs and the downstairs. And it's a car.
There's only about half a meter between them.
Again, the way the old setup was built out, it just didn't quite work. Again, you could pretty much only fit one of you down the side of the kitchen kind of thing. So I came up with the genius idea, which I thought at the time, was to put a blow-up bed at the top, put like a single blow-up bed, so I could be really comfortable and just put Anthony downstairs.
Yeah.
Be like, listen, you bought this without me. I'm going to be the one comfortable.
And that slowly got a bit rubbish because like the novelty of that, blowing up a blow-up bed every night and putting it upstairs. Yeah, anyway. So we made the decision, before we made the decision to do travelling, to get it redone. So by then our sort of smaller travels did have a better setup. Still had the same pop top, but we just slept downstairs. We had cushions that kind of covered the whole of the back.
Okay, gotcha.
So we removed any kind of high kind of traditional bench top from the back of the Troopy. So by day it was a lounge, by night it was a bed.
Yes. And by the time we set off, I think we had replaced 90% of the old rental thing. Like when we bought it, I thought, hey, it's turnkey in a box, everything you need. And it, it wasn't wrong.
Right.
But there's better ways of doing things than a rental company does. And so, I think by the time we left, 90% of the old Troopy had been completely redone with the new stuff that we have. The final piece that we actually got 4 or 5 months into the trip was we actually put a new pop top on it, a different one, because it was just like, hey, we're living in this thing. The quality of life will be phenomenally changed if you have a dedicated bed and you can leave your bedding there and it's just way more comfortable. And so we did make the choice to sort of spend a pretty substantial amount of our travel, chest to actually improve the quality of life. Because by that point we were like, well, we're in this for the long run. It's not just a year thing. It's like we're going to try and keep this going as long as we can. So let's make it comfy.
Mm-hmm. So from there, did you have a set path? Did you have areas already mapped out on your spreadsheets? Or did you say, hey, let's go and do seat of the pants?
Yeah, so, I mean, along with the majority of people that travel Australia, they call it the lap. So it's like you're going to do the lap. So, you kind of choose whether you're going to go clockwise, anti-clockwise, depending on the seasons and obviously where you want to go in the country. And so that was kind of our initial idea, is that we go to Tasmania first, which is south of Melbourne, across the Bass Strait, and we spent nearly 3 months there. It was like 11 weeks, wasn't it? Yeah. It did rain for about 10 weeks of those 11.
Ooh.
But it was still beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
We will need to go back. And then back to the mainland, and then we were going to do a full lap of the country, anti-clockwise.
Okay.
As for many, we started our trip in November 2019, and we didn't get very far until there was a pandemic. But our original plan was to spend about a year traveling around Australia, and we'd pretty much committed that we wanted to ship the Troopy abroad. So once we'd done Australia, our goal was to ship it to Vancouver, and then kind of, we'd followed so many people that had done the Pan American, and we thought, well, if that works out, we'll see then how we get on. So that was originally kind of our thinking. But yeah, the plan got foiled a little bit, as for many people.
Yeah. So how long had you been on the road when that happened?
Well, and this was the thing. The other interesting thing that we had with Australia is that when we were leaving Tasmania, there was an incredibly large section of the East Coast on fire. So we had really, really bad bushfires that year. So even before the pandemic started, we had to sort of do these detours. We did Outback New South Wales in the summer. Do not recommend. Very warm. But we kind of had to do these detours. And then as Ant mentioned, in the February is when we had our roof redone in Sydney. So, we had the roof redone. We were so excited. It was just, I remember our first night in our new pop top, because it has it's separate bed on gas struts. So the roof goes up and then the bed platform goes into the roof. And you can leave your bedding up there. And we were so excited. We were like, this is going to be amazing. So comfortable. And then we drove north to stay with some friends in Coffs Harbour. And that's pretty much in the March 2020 when everything... So we'd really only been, I'd say, 4 months in total, with some breaks with doing the roof. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
We left our mates in Coffs, having been with them for a week or two. They were so accommodating and so lovely. And then they recommended this, they sent us a pin on the map and said, hey, here's a good camp spot nearby as a springboard to head north. So we got there, and then they sent us a text saying, oh, should we put the kettle on? And I'm like, what does he mean? Why did he just text us that saying, should he put the kettle back on? And that's when we looked at the news and saw that, all right, borders are closing, everything's shutting down, everyone's got to be inside. And they were like, well, did you want to come back? And that's when we made the snap decision to then just fang it into Queensland. If we were going to be locked in one state, Queensland would be the one. And it's kind of funny because we thought, as a lot of people did, this will blow over, give it 2 weeks, give it 3 weeks, and we'll be back on the road. So we tried to get on the ferry to Stradbroke Island, thinking we could just sit on the beach for a couple of weeks and let it all blow over.
Right.
Yeah, we got turned around by the lady at the, when you go up and get a ticket for a ferry, and she just took one look at us and was like, nope. You don't live here. Kind of, anyone that was a local could go.
Yeah, it was a weird time, eh?
But yeah, we genuinely thought maybe we'll just go and, hang out in the Troopy, for a couple of weeks. It'll be fine. I was very, very fortunate. I had a friend who had a place in Queensland who offered for us to stay there, because the other challenge we had is, and many others, is that if you weren't fully self-contained, so you didn't have a grey water, black water toilet situation within your camper, you couldn't stay at any of the caravan parks. So we had to get out of the Troopy. And we were very, very lucky that a good friend of mine had a place in Queensland that he kindly let us stay in.
Wow.
And we were there for 10 weeks.
Yeah. Well, aside from that depressing time, let's rewind a little bit. What was some of your favorite places that you got to explore during that 4 or 5 month stint?
We were just so grateful to start in Tasmania. It is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It was very wet. I'm from the UK, so didn't make much of a difference. But just the again, like I mentioned, when we moved to Australia, it was just a feeling. When we went to Tassie, it just felt very much like home. The East Coast and the beaches and the crystal clear but very cold water. And then the West Coast is like ancient rainforest. So it just ticked every box from an adventure perspective. We got to see so many different places, the animals, the nature. Yeah, of all the places that we've been, Tassie just keeps being, it's top of the list.
Yeah, you've mentioned it several times, but I also recall those episodes. I mean, I loved everything that you were sharing, but man, there was something about Tassie that just was just unreal.
I think it was a special time too, because it was the place in which we did the most decompression. Like, we left home and we were coming out of these corporate jobs, and it was all go, and like, we had a schedule and a budget and a spreadsheet. And like, over the 11 weeks we were there, by the end of the 11 weeks, I had stopped habitually opening up my phone and looking at, Slack or Outlook or whatever. I'd finally, like, it was the place in which that decompression had happened. And I think there was a lot of shedding that both of us did in Tassie, for sure.
There's something special about those first regions that you do that, and you finally do disconnect from the rat race. It's just ingrained,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But we did get to travel, so we were very fortunate that, after we had our short stint staying in one place, we took off into Queensland, and as the borders within the country opened up, we got to travel. We did all of Outback, not all because it's just so massive, but we did a lot of Outback Queensland, which is, again, a very special place. I mean, we've mentioned, some of these tiny towns that are a little bit similar to some of the ones in the US, where you've got, someone's lived there for 20 years, they run the pub, and they're just the most welcoming, environment to kind of go and have a meal, sit and have a chat, hear all their stories about their background. And that was probably one of my favorite things, is just traveling through these very remote places and meeting these people who, that's normal life for them, so yeah, Queensland was incredible. But then when we got into the Northern Territory, we were so incredibly lucky to see some things, being the only two people there. And that was a really, really special time. We got to be at Uluru in the Northern Territory, which is an incredibly special place. And we were the only ones there at sunset and the only ones there at sunrise. And that will never happen again. Yeah. And that's a pretty... Yeah, that's an incredibly special memory.
So when it comes to like difficult tracks, we've talked a little bit about obviously after our fun ride in Colorado, but what were some of the more challenging tracks that you guys did? And did you ever have, I mean, you guys, like, that's really remote. You are self-sufficient at that point, and that's why a lot of folks travel, in a convoy, but you were running solo for the most part, I assume, right?
Yeah.
So what were some of those areas where you were just kind of like, oh, okay, we're out here by ourselves, like this could get sideways?
Yeah. It was a funny time as well, because not only were we riding solo, it was at a time where you weren't allowed to communicate with anyone else. Like, you couldn't be together. So you were, like, we were alone, almost by rule.
Right.
So most of our tracks were about distance and endurance. It was long distances across the Tanami Desert. We did a few off-roady bits. Actually, we did quite a lot, actually, didn't we? Come to think about it.
When you say a few.
Yeah. You know how there's Kevin tracks and there's Sarah tracks? Well, like, I think we had like Ant tracks and Emma tracks. There is a dent in our water tank where it was too much of an ant track, and we hung the Troopy up on something. But the most hectic, I think, of tracks that we did was the old Telegraph track up in Cape York. We were down in Mount Isa, which on a map is a very long way away from the tip of Cape York. We were actually on our way west into the Northern Territory when we saw the news that actually the Cape's going to reopen. The communities there have said, "Yeah, okay," and we're going to reopen up the Cape. And so we made the decision to just turn around and drive 3 days back the way we just came.
Wow.
It took us a while to get there, yeah.
And then up to the tip of the Cape, which is, and if just for anybody who's not sure, Cape York is essentially the farthest north you can get on the Australian mainland.
Gotcha.
And it is just an absolutely stunning piece of country. It is. You go through everything. You go through red dust, absolute desolate dryness, to bush and brush and big station lands, and then you can head out to the communities on the coast, and there's mangroves and rainforest. Like it's just magic, and it's really far away. It is way out there. But yeah, the telegraph track is pretty famous. Lots of pictures of cars with wheels in the air, and everyone knows gunshot and slingshot with people throwing their trucks down vertical drops and stuff like that. So it's sort of enshrined in this lore. But for us, it took us 4 days, was it?
Yeah, we did about 4 days.
4 days.
I think, and when we think about kind of the off-road stuff that we did, a lot of it was, long corrugated roads. There's a lot of those in Australia. To the point where you feel like the Troopies being rattled apart kind of thing, yeah.
Right.
But then there was a couple, of places that were very technical, which are things like the teletrack. And when when the Cape opened, we could have gone to the top of the Cape without doing the teletrack. You can take the very corrugated road all the way north if you wanted to. And again, when you're living in your vehicle, some of these tracks, when they're optional, it's a big decision to take your home.
Oh yeah.
On in these places, but it's a place we always wanted to visit, and some of the pictures that we'd seen of the campsites along the telly, and next to the waterfalls and the creeks, and just these amazing swimming holes, and we just thought, well, we'll give it a go, because we knew that. So about 50% along the telly, you can essentially come off and don't have to continue the whole way. The whole thing's very technical though, so you've already been through a fair bit. But it was a case of, let's just see how we go. There will be other people there, not as many as usual. So, there'll be people to help us if, we do get stuck, essentially. But that was definitely the most technical. There are very, very few times we've used our winch. And there was one moment where I fell down a hole, basically.
Okay.
And front left wheels up in the air, and I just remember my face in the driving seat being very close to the ground. So that was an interesting moment, and it was just a washout that just hadn't calculated the best. But yeah, that was an interesting time, but we had a lot of fun. Yeah,
it was fun. I feel like it was 4 days of us really going through it together. You'd go a little bit, and then you'd come across an obstacle, and it'd be like, all right, how are we going to do this? And we'd communicate and figure it out. And Emma drove the whole thing. Awesome. And so I would be hopping in and out and either filming or spotting or, and I think, Emma started with the first little bit and then kept going and then kept going and then kept going. And it was like, I'm going to finish this. I'm doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And
I will cool. mention about 60% of the way in, I did have a little cry.
You did. You did. Yeah.
I think that's okay.
And that's actually because, so this is actually after, so some of these obstacles you can get around, and they just, fondly named the chicken track.
Mhm.
Still technical, but you know, you kind of, some of them you've got options, you know, so you don't have to do the really extreme part if you don't want to. And there was one section where we'd just taken the easier route around Gunshot because we assessed it, not throwing our car down there.
Right.
We live in it.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch others though.
Sure.
And then we just came to this next section, which, you know, didn't look too technical. We just had to get up it. And Anne was filming and he's like, second low, nice and easy, up the hill. And I don't really know what happened, but I pressed the go pedal a bit too hard and flew up this kind of muddy section. And the whole thing was just, it kind of shocked me kind of in terms of the how quick you could lose control of your vehicle. And that was a moment that I still have a little bit of PTSD around, you know, if even though you're planning and you're spotting each other, things can happen. So that's when I had my little cry.
Oh, yeah.
But then I went and finished it. So,
So
Yeah.
proud of you.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Good job.
That's awesome. You mentioned before there was a few crossings where crocs were a real threat.
Mhm.
I mean, we joke like all of our Australian friends who come over here, they're scared to death of bears. And we're like, wait, you're from Australia where literally everything wants to kill you, especially the crocs. So did you ever have any close encounters with those?
Never had any dangerous close encounters. We had a close encounter at Kales in the NT, and then in a national park called
Gregory.
Yeah, Judborough. We knew there were crocs in some of the crossings that we had to get through, but of course, like, we're on our own. It's really not very wise to, you know, drive into an unknown depth of crossing, and you know, especially when you can't see the bottom, and I'm not going to go out there and wade through it.
Right.
So we had a few of those that were a bit touch and go, but no major dramas.
So what did you do in that situation where you get this? What did you just wait and watch someone else who's done it before? Or?
Well, in Judborough there was nobody else.
Okay.
We didn't see people for about a week at that point. So Judborough, we were just on our own, and so what we did was pick a line that followed where floodwaters had deposited trees and logs, so that it must be a little bit shallow. Have the winch ready if we did need to spring out and you know, run across to the other side, and
Very quickly.
Just generally have a plan B and a plan C. But yeah, we never had to enact any of those. But yeah, it was just about careful planning. But the closest we actually got to an actual croc, to be fair, was there's a sort of tourist river cruise you can do in Kakadu National Park, which I absolutely recommend. Kakadu is magic, and it's called the White River Cruise, is it? Or White River something? But it goes through, it just goes up the river, and there's all these billabongs, and there's all this wildlife, like river ox and crocodiles that just sort of wander up the river very slowly. They move in such a weird way. But yeah, that's the actual physical closest we got to one, was on a bit of a tourist ride. But you do see them. You genuinely, you'll be driving over a bridge and you look down at the river below, and there's this huge, like 4 or 5 meter croc just chilling in the sunshine.
Oh my gosh.
So they are around.
Yeah.
But we didn't have any major dramas.
Gotcha.
We also had this, so we'd be given a tip by friends to go to a place called Butterfly Gorge, which was in the Northern Territory. And they'd mentioned, you know, you park, there's a walk, and then you get to the gorge, which, you know, you can sit there, have lunch, have a swim. And we got there, but there was a small water crossing before you then got to the gorge section. Obviously on foot, not by vehicle. So, you know, our friends had said, you know, this is a safe place to swim. So it's actually in one of our episodes, and we're So we had to wade across one section to get to the place we were going. So I've got a bag over my head. Ant's holding a bag over his head. I think one of us is somehow holding a GoPro. And we're just wading through this pretty much up to kind of armpit level. Thinking, about halfway through, we think, hang on a minute. Have we just taken some really bad advice? Everything was fine. There were no Crocs in there. But there was this
Oh, my gosh.
There are these moments where, in the dry season, a lot of these places are cut off. So there's no food for the Crocs anyway. So there are sections where, and they get looked at by rangers. A lot of they'll put traps as the dry season commences to kind of make sure there's none in there, or try to. But that was the only moment where I thought, there's no joke, traveling in Australia in some of these places. But we lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, what was that swimming hole we went to? And there was this handwritten note pegged to one of the trees that said, like, Croc spotted 2 days ago, FYI.
Yeah, so some people will leave notes too. So at some of these gorges, which again should be Croc free because of the dry season and there not being a lot of fish and not food for them. Sometimes you'll see a note that says, sure I saw a Croc. Can't even say that.
Oh my gosh.
So, adds a bit of flavour to the to the adventure.
Right.
But we never had any close encounters.
Gotcha.
I guess.
And you've said that, again, from our American perspective, all that stuff that's down there ready to kill you kind of thing. You've not really had any run-ins with anything dangerous like, all the different snakes and the spiders and that kind of thing.
No, not really. And some of the major ones like sharks, they'll, I don't know how to say this. They're an apex predator, so if they're going to get you, well, it's happening anyway. Like, whereas a bear, you can see coming at you. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So there's this level of safety of, like, ignorance is bliss. If it's going to happen, it's happening. Whereas if a bear's coming at me, then I'll be aware about it.
Right.
Right. So that's why I'm quite scared of bears.
You can choose not to get in the water.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I think we almost got disappointed that we didn't see, too many snakes. Because, some of them are just absolutely beautiful. Some of the, I want to get near them. Mm-hmm. But no, we didn't see many at all. If they feel you coming, they'll scurry off.
Sure.
They don't tend to sit there waiting for you. And we've seen some beautiful spiders in trees, kind of orb.
Giant orb weavers.
Weavers and things
amazing.
like that.
And how big do those get?
Oh, like a dinner plate.
Dinner plate.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And they got this big blue bum, and it's beautiful.
Wow.
They're not wandering into camp, know.
Right.
And I think often with spiders in Australia, it's the bigger ones that are actually non-poisonous that look the scariest, like the huntsman spiders. They're massive.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Can get massive, but they're not poisonous. So, but we never had any. I thought for sure we were going to get one in the canvas tent or the pop top, but no. The only thing we ever had in our Troopy was a mouse.
We called him Stanley, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we called him Bernard.
Oh, yeah, that was it. Bernard.
Yeah.
As we tried to get rid of him.
Yeah, that didn't go well.
Didn't go well for Bernard. We tried, buddy, but
Yeah.
you didn't go.
Had to take extreme measures.
That's it.
Yeah.
But the other, especially in Tassie, the kangaroos and the wallabies and the paddy melons and the echidnas and the koalas. Our nature every country's got incredible in animals. But yeah, some of the animals in Australia are just so special to see.
You've got
wild.
some weird stuff down there. Relatively speaking, just looking at the rest of the world. It's wild.
Yeah.
The echidna's my favorite because it doesn't have feet. It just has like 4 hands. So it's like the 2 at the front face forward,
right,
and the ones at the back face backwards.
Wow.
And it has a little not long snout, and it's got like a prickly prickly.
It's like a hedgehog,
Like
like
a
a tiny
hedgehog.
hedgehog. Yeah,
It's a combo of a few things,
That's
Yeah.
wild.
but they're just so fun to see in the wild. So
it's like if you asked an 8-year-old, "Can you draw a hedgehog from memory?" and they'll draw an echidna. Yeah.
Oh wow.
But yeah, we saw some amazing wildlife. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you have any close encounters with the kangaroos? You know, because I mean they smack those things fairly often down there, right? Kind of
Yeah.
like deer here.
We're quite lucky. We only hit one, like an adolescent Western grey. I think
it was Western grey.
We generally didn't drive at dusk, which is when they start coming out.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, we hit one once, and luckily it was gone. So there was no. Yeah, you do the right thing. You go back, you check the pouch, and make sure it's gone. But yeah, only one incident, which by other people's measures is incredibly lucky.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was a bit of a sad moment as well. Unfortunately, I was driving, and yeah, as I said, we rarely drive into the dark or even dusk.
Uh-huh.
But unfortunately, we were trying to get to a particular camp. We were on a private road, so we had to keep going. We were driving slowly
Right.
as we could, but they just come out of nowhere.
I can only imagine. I mean, those things are, they covering 20 feet with their bounds.
Yeah,
Like,
and they are agile.
Yeah.
Like they'll just change direction like you wouldn't believe. And so, yeah, unfortunately, sometimes that direction is in the way instead of out of the way.
That was a bit
Jeez.
sad, so I
Yeah.
had to stop drivers. I was like, I'm done driving.
I
Oh yeah.
understand, yeah.
I would have done the same
Yeah.
thing.
So you've got a pretty stout rhubarb on the front of the Troopy
Yeah,
then? Okay.
yeah, big old rhubarb.
Yeah.
The only genuinely somewhat dangerous wildlife encounter we had was with a feral bull. Again in Judborough, and this thing was huge, like the size of the car, and it was throwing its head around and stomping, and like it was
Crazy.
clearly not happy we were there. So I stick it in reverse and start backing up and giving it more space, because we sort of came up on it, and it was only when it moved did we see it like in contrast against the bush in the background. So I think we came up on it pretty quick, not knowing it was there. So I put it in reverse and started going backwards, but we're in low range, and so I'm actually going very fast. And so yeah, that's when it starts like snorting and throwing its head around and coming towards us, and so quickly whip it up into high range and start moving backwards at a slightly faster pace. And it took us a good half an hour maybe of just giving it space and let it chill out and head off in a different direction. But I still had to put the foot down just to sort of clear it.
Gotcha.
Because we're sort of inching, and then pick your moment, and you put your foot down and get past it, and it was coming at us pretty quick.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, feral bull of all animals was actually the only one that we had a sort of semi-serious encounter with.
Wow. That's
I'm,
funny.
I'm pretty sure we've had freshwater crocs swim past us.
Oh,
Do you remember
yeah,
that place
I
we
do
went
remember
where
that
we got in
place.
the water? And it's...
Where was that? That's gonna bug me.
Mm,
I know what you mean.
it's in
though.
outback Queensland.
Yeah.
And you drive on dusty roads for hours. Hours and hours and hours. And all of a sudden this beautiful gorge, blue water. I mean, it's just incredible. And you can camp right there. We stayed for a couple of days. And you can swim, but there are freshwater crocs in there. So I was thinking, I don't know why. I thought, yeah, all right then. I'm not sure you got in.
No.
It's like, I'm a bedroom guitarist. This is not
yeah,
for me.
So I thought I'll go for a little swim, and other people had too. And we'd had friends that had gone there and gone for
Okay.
a swim. So I
Yeah.
thought, well, that's what I said last time about the gorge that we walked through.
Right.
So maybe I should stop trusting friends. Went for a swim, and I didn't see anything or feel anything, but I'm pretty sure because at dusk when we went for the hike up to the top of the gorge, you see all their heads pop up, so you know they're there.
What?
So they sort of just come to the surface.
So we're at the top, and we're doing a time lapse. So I'm there for an hour and 45 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
And normally we just sort of settle in and chill out and just watch the sun go down and enjoy the moment. And yeah, so you sat up the top and you look down at the swimming hole that you were in a few hours ago, and all their heads start popping up and they start milling around. And it's like, oh yeah, right.
So very Australian.
So they generally don't bother humans. They're just feeding on fish and stuff like that then?
Yeah, and they're
Okay.
pretty, they're not really active during the day.
Wow.
But I would have been in the same body of water as a little freshwater croc.
All right.
They're not very big, but
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't do it again.
Uh-huh.
One and done.
Okay.
2 out of 10. Don't recommend it.
Good to know. Good to know. Taking notes here.
But you can give it a go when you visit.
Yeah, we'll see.
Good.
We'll see.
I won't trust friends.
They don't trust us.
I'm up for a cold plunge, not a croc plunge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, with the Troopy, did you have any mechanical troubles or anything on your stint?
We had one. At 287,000 Ks, the original alternator gave out.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough,
Okay.
Good
Yeah.
innings. We were very lucky that we had just left Cooktown. So this was as we were beginning to leave to head north to go up to Cape York. So it was a good job that it failed at Cooktown, because Cooktown's the last town, full stop, until you get to the top. So it was only about 10 Ks out of the town that the voltmeter started going a bit nuts and dropping. And so we hung out in Cooktown for another 3 or 4 days, had one freighted up and then fitted.
And these are the unromantic parts of traveling. I think,
Yes.
a lot of the things that
yeah.
you see,
Right.
if people do film, or all the, positive parts. We were waiting for this alternator, and our mechanic back near Melbourne, who we know really well, had shipped one up, didn't he, from Brisbane?
Yep.
He found one for us, and the only place we could get into to camp was, because there wasn't any free camping there, was a caravan park, and it had the worst sand flies across the whole thing. So it's one of those moments that you want people to know that when these things go wrong, it's always the most unglamorous situation where you're waiting for a part, you're being eaten by sand flies. It's so humid, super hot, so you don't want to be sat in the Troopy. You want to just be sat under the awning, but we got decimated. So,
Oh,
so when we look back, it's kind of a funny memory.
Yeah.
But definitely not in the moment.
Yeah, it's miserable.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some of the videos of the fly situation you guys have down there, and I'm just like, I just walk around with a bug net over me all the time.
Yeah. Just embrace the head net,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's incredible.
And then the only other time we thought we had a problem was when we were on that beach in South Australia. We were just out of signal, and the Troopy wouldn't start.
Oh, I know the one you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that was just a kink in one of the seals on the fuel filter. So it left just enough air into the system to let it all roll back to the tank, and then it wouldn't start, or it would start for a bit and then cut out.
Oh yeah.
But those first couple of minutes when the car's not starting and it's unusual for it not to start, you're thinking,
Wait a minute.
huh.
Oh boy.
Only time the car's never actually failed, as in it
Right.
started and then gave out. I was like, this has never happened before. Like, what? Anyway, it just turned out to be something super, super simple.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, out there, big situation like that is a critical part. I mean, what do you do if you're halfway between civilization points? I mean, are there recovery teams that send out flatbeds, or what would you do at that point?
That's a really good question. It depends, right?
Yeah.
It depends on where you are, and we always found that when you're out in the middle of nowhere, if you see someone on the side of the road, like, you stop and just check, like, you good.
Gotcha.
So others would always do the same for you.
Yeah.
We stopped by the side of the road for some lunch once, or just to check where we're going, and a truckie would slow down and just lean his head out the window and just be like, you guys
Right.
okay?
Right.
So if there's traffic, they'll check. Some places, like some of the stations, will offer recovery services for a fee, because it's their time and it's their resource and their machinery that they're putting at risk to come pull you out of wherever you're stuck.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think like self-sufficiency is really the name of the game.
Gotcha.
Like carry some spares,
Yeah.
drive with mechanical sympathy, and yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah. So you're not gonna hook it off gunshot, know, if you can help that.
Otherwise, it's a long way out.
Goodness gracious, that's crazy. So going back to your storyline chronologically, COVID hits.
Mm-hmm.
And you're finding yourself more and more constrained. What did you do at that point?
Well, we got pretty sad for a bit.
Yeah, it took a while to come to terms with it all.
But goodness came out of it. I think once we had let go of the journey that we thought we were going to go on, once we'd sort of released ourselves from that, it was kind of liberating. It was like, well, look, we're running out of money a lot faster than we thought we would because of everything that's happened. So let's just make the most of it until we got to go back.
Right.
I think once we'd let go of the vision of shipping abroad and let go of what we thought that was going to look like, it was actually kind of liberating. It was like, look, we'll be fine.
Right.
We'll just go until the money runs out. And just enjoy it. And so that was very freeing. And we ended up doing a year around half of Australia because Western Australia never opened as a state at the time. The borders never opened. So, we got a fair way around a very big country over the course of just over a year.
And then we decided we didn't want to go home yet because there was sort of, whilst we'd accepted the situation, there's always something in the back of our mind that thought, something might happen and, you're kind of always optimistic. So we decided to do sort of a hybrid of travel, Airbnb, because it was actually affordable at the time because there wasn't anyone really in the Airbnbs.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So we were able to negotiate, can we have, this Airbnb for a month for this much, and then we picked up remote jobs. We were very, very fortunate to get 2 remote jobs because again, that was one of the positives out of that situation where everybody was working from home.
And that was back in the IT field again?
Yeah. Back in the tech corporate. So we did sort of a hybrid where we sort of hopped around again, parts of the country, doing sort of anywhere between 4 and 8 weeks in a particular area. So we could explore, but we could work as well during the day.
Gotcha.
And that was interesting. I think it was good for a while. And then we both felt this real sense of just temporaryism. Just everything felt very much everything was on hold. What were we really doing? What did we want to do? It was different to full-time travel. When you're full-time traveling, you get to decide what you do with that day. Whereas, we were still kind of in the 9-to-5 job whilst trying to explore new places. And sure, we were in new places, but we were working. So it became challenging for us.
I think we lost sight of the why. We were away from home for just over 2 years end to end. And about halfway through that second year is when we sort of started losing sight of shore on like, why are we doing this? Because we're not fully traveling, we're not fully committing to working, we're not home, so you don't have your community, your friends, your cafes, you don't have your things around you, and it was sort of a little bit adrift, I think, towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was a crystallizing moment for you to decide to shift gears yet again?
That's a really good question. Townsville?
Yeah, when we got to Townsville, which is northern Queensland, I felt very sad. It was just a general, a lot of anxiety, just a lot of sadness, not really pinpointing to anything specific. I think it was just a build, from everything that had happened. And I just remember one day just being not in a great place at all, and just saying to Ant, if we were home, maybe we could just figure it out. If we could go back home, see our friends, just take a breath, pause,
just level set.
But yeah, I was not in a good place.
And I think it was an accumulation, that Airbnb in particular, not uncommon in the tropical north, but plenty of cockroaches around. And you open up a kitchen cupboard and it's like, ugh. And you're working from a kitchen table rather than a desk, and you're cooking with Airbnb crockery instead of proper stuff. And I think all of these little things just all built up to be
it eats away at you for sure.
You just didn't feel comfortable. You never felt at home. It was like temporaryism's a good word for it. So I think we were just very, very unsettled for a little while.
I would say just felt incredibly lost. Lost is just a good word to, what are we doing? And I think it was just a moment to say, well, if we went home, regroup, and just have a bit of time, and see how we go. And we were incredibly grateful that we had our own place that we could go back to, and just pull the pin and say, let's just have a bit of time together.
And that's something that you're talking about, the unglamorous parts of travel. There's those pros and cons to every choice that we make, and going on the road, whether that's full-time or longer term, you're sacrificing familiarity, comfort, and community. And we've learned, and I'm sure you guys agree with this, that those are fine so long as your life is filled with challenges, new experiences, and adventure, meeting new people. But when you kind of get in that treading water moment, and especially like during the COVID time, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of frustrations, it starts to wear on you. And all of a sudden you do see yourself longing for that predictability and that comfort that comes from having, familiar surroundings and familiar pillow and sheets that are your own, and cookware that's not from the dollar store, and all those different pieces. Would you say that that's the moment when you started to pivot back and find that appreciation again?
Yeah, and it coincided with the tenants that were in our house at the time. They put in an offer to buy a place of their own, and so they handed us their sort of 4 weeks heads up that they're going to move out. And it was like, once again, this is a bit of a sign. Hey, the house is becoming available rather than rented out again. Yeah, like Emma said, like, let's go home, let's regroup. That sense of where we ought to be, sort of came back. And so that's why in very, very end of 2021 was when we ended up moving back in. It was just before Christmas, wasn't it?
Just
so
before
we had
Christmas.
Christmas on a camp chair.
That was great.
It's pretty good.
I remember then we pulled into our driveway and we both got out of the car and just both burst into tears. Just real relief, you know what I mean? Okay. Just a real, we can just have a moment. So even though we were sat in camp chairs, it was like camping in your own house.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was fun.
No, absolutely.
It was it was the safety.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just, and it was almost kind of novel, right? Because you just spent 2 years sort of in this, living in the Troopy and then not, and then back in the Troopy, and I don't know. It was a fun time.
It was a lot.
It was a lot, but it was a really nice time together.
So, we share sort of a similar trajectory with kind of where we've been with the ups and the downs and sort of the realizations. And tell me if you feel the same way, but you start to realize that there's this underlying sort of expectation that partially built for yourself, but also, if we're being honest, like partially upheld by, what we see on social media. And so you have this story arc, that you want to have with these travels. And when that gets cut short, not that you're hanging your entire identity on travel, but that moment in your life, that was what you had aspired to, worked for, initiated at, usually with great sacrifice. And to have that cut short beyond just the COVID pieces of this, like, it's kind of a gut shot. But did you feel like there was this sort of underlying, especially, the fact that you're filming it, did you feel that underlying pull to continue for the sake of just continuing?
A little bit, yeah. I'll take a step back and I'll say that unbeknownst to me at the time, when we were planning to go traveling and then set off in 2019, I didn't really know that at the time that I was pretty miserable with the way that the life we were leading, like the jobs that we had and the grind that it was. I didn't know that because I didn't really know any different. I'd sort of been in that career for a very long time. And so I was looking to the travel as an answer for, it's going to help me. This is the solution. It wasn't the solution, but it was an amazing facilitator, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
It gives you the headspace and it gives you the time,
Right.
not just in your own head, but together, time together that we hadn't ever had. And so that was a lot of the accelerant for that period of freedom and uplifting. And, when we'd let go of the vision and we were just present for the first time, I think, in my life. I was legitimately present. We both were. And it was amazing.
Right.
And when that sense of presence started to wane, because we were working remotely again, back in a field that I had left behind intentionally, and we're sort of carrying on moving around because, well, that's what we're doing and we don't want to go home, right? That's when that sense of like, I think I'm just carrying on because I'm just carrying on.
Yeah.
I can't quite see why I'm doing this.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And because I think we both thought it was the answer and we were back whilst there was the safety of home, I definitely felt a lot of that failure.
Yeah.
We hoped it would go a different way. So even when we got home, took me a while not to sort of, it was a weird combo of safety as well as like just crisis of questioning everything,
Right.
and how it went. And
Yeah, because you didn't get to come back with like this celebration.
No.
Right? Like, oh, we conquered this and we did that and now we're just home.
And I think as well, throw in the filmmaking, because we were very slow filmmakers and, algorithms don't like slowness, there was we had a lot of outside influence that was telling us, just make more videos, don't go home, essentially try and do something different, which just didn't feel right for us. So then we had this sort of conflict of, we actually kind of almost put the cameras, like we didn't want to pick them up.
Yeah.
We had a real sort of
Aversion to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, when we got home, barely picked up a camera.
Yeah.
Really.
I cracked open an SD card. August 2021 was the last clip I took. And then it was August 2023 that we started the creator series. So what's that? 2 years.
Wow.
2 years. I just cold turkey.
Wow.
Didn't touch one. And it wasn't because I didn't want to film. I think it was a culmination of a lot of things that I just lost all sense of connection to whatever it was we were doing. And it turned into a period of well, let's just like grind through this little bit and get to the other side.
Right.
The grass is greener on the other side.
Sure.
I just got to work a little harder and get through it,
Mm-hmm.
and everything will be all right. It was just a period of years and not weeks or months
Yeah.
to get through that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you guys, you went back home, you kind of reset, picked back up jobs again. At what point did you decide, hey, it's time to pick the cameras back up again? It's time to be creative again. What was that turning point?
Well, also interject. Did you stop music as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's when Emma said you need to probably speak to somebody because that's not you.
Yeah,
to
when-
give up,
when
to
the
give up
music
both
stops.
things.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
You know, when you know each other so well, and I'm sure the both of you know each other so well that you know when something really isn't right, you know? So when the music wasn't being made and the guitars weren't being picked up, even though we were home and we had time, you know, and they're right there, that's when you know something's not right. So, you know, we weren't creative at all for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was quashed. It was suppressed. It was like buried in this, I don't know how to describe it, but it was this, you know, obviously that sense of failure was in it. You know, that sense of failure that you mentioned. It was just got to get through this little bit, just get to the other side, and then we'll quit and go traveling again, and then everything will be fine. Like, I don't know. There was a lot in it. So back to your question, I can't remember exactly when the date was, but I can remember saying to Emma, who has a wonderful phrase about there are chapters in lives. That was one thing that travel taught us, is that everything has a chapter, and it's okay to have multiple chapters that do different things.
Yeah.
And I said to Emma, I think my chapter in this house has come to an end. Like, I think I want to move. I want to go somewhere else. I just want to have access to what it is we love: the ocean, mountains, like the outside. I also want to have access to maybe communities of like-minded people that we hadn't yet met and weren't able to meet when we were traveling because of COVID.
Yeah.
And you know, so there was like we made the call to put the house on the market and kind of close that whole chapter altogether.
Right.
You know, it was the house that we left and then had to come back to, and the jobs that I'd left and had to come back to. And like, it was like, you know what? Let's just close the chapter on all of this, move and make a fresh start. And that fresh start was the genesis of like picking up a camera again, and new scenery, new backyard, new smells, new sights, new animals, new things to get into. And it coincided with the time where the ex-Overland crew reached out and said, hey, we're firing up this creator series. You know, we'd submitted a film for one of their film festivals a very, very long time ago during COVID.
Right.
And that's where the connection was made. And, you know, I think I personally, thinking out loud, I saw it as like a redemption thing. It was like, yes, this is the thing I can sink my teeth into as a facilitator to get back to not just what I love doing, but the person that I know that I could be if I had the time, space, and tools to do it. So it was super clunky, like trying to remember how everything worked, like, you know, how I had everything dialed and how it all worked. And we had to figure out like our dynamic again in the Troopy, and, you know, things didn't work and stuff was moldy. And like, you know, there's a scene in one of our episodes in the creator series where we're going through the Troopy with a fine tooth comb, like trying to figure out, okay, well, what's in it? And what state is it in? Because genuinely, when we pulled up on the driveway, when we got home at the very end of 2021, it then sat for 18 months. It went nowhere. It literally went nowhere. So it was like, it just stopped dead.
Right.
So it really was this reopening of a whole past self, trying to sort of reacquaint ourselves with our past self, and then figuring out how to either get back to that past self or, you know, create something new. And luckily we ended up on the something new path.
Right.
in a good way.
Is kind of why we sat here.
Well, and that was my next question. Was,
Oh man, you're good at this. Yeah, that's a good segue.
So that being said, I mean, this is the story till now, right? So here we are in the present. Okay, so you had this spark of inspiration and a reminder of where you came from, what you love, and you had a window to go and create, for the XO Creator Series. It sounds to me as if that really lit a new fire, and from our conversations on our trip, it sounds like that there's you talk about new chapters, there's this undercurrent of excitement and freedom that you guys have kind of been swept into again, and kind of the world's at your fingertips at this point. So what's next?
That's a good question, eh?
Yeah, this year's been, particularly the second half of this year, it's just been amazing. And when I messaged you, Kevin, that was because we had an opportunity to go to Overland Expo, which was always on our list. Like when we were originally going to ship and do the Americas, we were going to come through, on the travels to do an expo. Like we'd always wanted to go to one, which is why I was like, are you guys going to be there? Mm-hmm. Like we'd love to meet you. And I think doing the Creator Series was, for me, incredibly therapeutic because it gave us the opportunity to process as well and move into new, which, it was just an incredible opportunity. When we got to Expo, we were kind of, I guess, reacquainted with people who had the same mindset as us and had been through similar struggles, and it just, I don't know, just gave us kind of that new lease on life around we can do this.
Right.
It is something that we are really passionate about, and we made amazing friends again that we'd kind of known through the internet but not really spoke to. Like Mac and Owen from Bound for Nowhere and Chris van Lingberg from Gone Dirt, and then it just it was like coming home. It was like having conversations with people that truly understood what we'd been through and what we wanted out of life. And that was a really, it was a really, really special time. I think most of Expo were just like deer in the headlights.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because we were like the Australians that just kind of turned up.
Walking around in flip-flops looking at trucks like, what? Yeah.
But yeah, just, and so many people, including yourselves, have just been, even this trip, it's just been incredible inspiration to remind ourselves, A, what we're capable of, also the trust that you've put in us around filming and traveling together, because it's tricky to spend 2 weeks with someone you've never met in person.
Yeah.
Especially when they have a family dynamic like we do.
It's just felt like a real breath of fresh air, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I'll speak to me. So I have since resigned from said full-time job previously,
Right.
which in all honesty was actually kind of tough. Like despite the, interesting relationship I had with my career in the past, by the time I resigned, I actually had a great team. Like I had a really good boss and a really good team, and things were going pretty well. It was a pretty sweet situation. So there was a bit of processing of like, wait a minute, like, there is something missing. Mm-hmm. Like it is very sweet at face value, mm-hmm. but like there is something that is calling you towards all of what we're discussing. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, when the opportunity came up to sort of say, hey, well, what if you dig into this XO Creator Series and you guys reached out and was like, hey, what if we went on a trip together? And it's like, you know what, if I can always go and find another job, what you can't do is give yourself the time back
Yeah.
that you didn't take, the opportunities that you were offered that you didn't take. And so that's where I am now, is just taking the time to take opportunities to make things, me personally, I can be really proud of. Create connections and relationships, and just see what can come of that. See how I can thrive with that, which is a very different headspace to where I was in 2019, where it was like, I'm gonna go travel around the world, and I'm gonna do the YouTube thing, and I'm gonna do that. It's a very different headspace. So that's me personally, and then if I can venture into what I would put at the very top of my wish list for what comes next, is the ability for us to choose to spend time together, like just to be together.
Yeah.
The time, like, I remember saying to Emma back in 2020. Oh man, we're getting old.
Time flies.
Time flies. Back in 2020, when the remote job thing was sort of coming to fruition, I was like, we can do this for 12 months or maybe 2 years, and then we'll go again. It took 4 years. It took a lot longer than I thought. And that has been a period of us just, I think, working towards a grass is greener mentality.
Right.
I think it's time to sit in some of that green grass and just like be together.
Yeah.
And just, it doesn't have to look a certain way.
Right.
But it's time together that we haven't had. And that took us a lot longer to fight for than we wanted.
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
Oh gosh, me. I think what I would want next, agreeing with everything that Anne said, is to do some of the things that I never actually allowed myself to think we could do or I could do. For me, particularly with the creating and the filmmaking, I've always had raging imposter syndrome, doesn't matter what it is. I'm like, nope, I'm not very good. And this trip's been incredible. And, the creator series that we did recently, to prove to myself I know a lot more than I think I kind of give myself credit for. So that's really what I want next for myself and for us together, is to just enjoy creating. Even the trip that we've just done the last couple of weeks, like, I've loved almost watching myself get excited about like the way I framed a shot. And I was like so proud of myself.
Yes.
It's just been super fun and just a lot of joy. And that's thanks to this opportunity to be able to travel with you guys. So I think it's just really given me probably more of an insight into truly what I would like to do and what I'm capable of, versus kind of just saying, oh, maybe I can do that. So yeah, I think I would just love to continue making films for ourselves, but making films for others and helping others, and being able to be part of their journey as well. I think we've really enjoyed kind of, being behind the camera instead of in front of it.
Right.
That's been a really fun change.
Yeah.
I'd just love to do more of it.
Well, I have to say, from our perspective, it's so fun to see how literally just our little chat on WhatsApp when you were looking at coming this way and being like, well, if you're coming this way, like, and you'd like to do some interesting things, like what if, and that's always like that pivotal moment. We always get these what if. Oh, that's a crazy idea, but what if? And I think a lot of us, and myself included, go for decades, watching the what ifs just pass by, and instead trading it for the security of what we know. And it's exciting when you do say, all right, let's do this. And it's been fun watching you guys, for the second time in a lot of ways, go, all right, screw it. Let's see what happens. Let's go and let's throw caution to the wind a little bit and put ourselves out there. And whether that's like in Emma's case, like expanding your camera skills, or and you just reinventing the music side of things and just bringing it full circle in a way that's also going to perpetuate, obviously, your income streams. But instead of pursuing your own YouTube as a primary outlet, taking that skill set and becoming a part of other stories. And I just have to say, after watching 3 of the 5 episodes that you guys did for XO, I am beyond, and I said this the other night, I'm just beyond excited to see your perspective on our story told in the style of We Will Roam. Like that's like I don't know, ever since watching your videos back in 2018 and 19 or whatever, just like a dream come true in a lot of ways. And then to meet you and travel with you and become not just friends, but I mean, seriously, like family. Like you guys, you've put up with our shenanigans and our toddler tantrums and our preteen angst, and all and the puppy peeing all over your feet because he's still learning to control himself.
He washed my shoes. It's fine.
All right. Yeah. I mean, it's you're not just creative people. You're incredible people, and we've really enjoyed traveling with you guys. There's an ease about your personalities, and just taking things in stride, and we're really excited to see your perspective on our travels. But before we kind of wrap this up, there's a few more questions that I have, and one of those is, having come from Australia and now having gone on the trip with us, what's your thoughts on travel here in America, and does that get you fired up for a potential stint here in the States?
I mean, yes. We've always wanted to travel the US, so this opportunity to see some of your favorite places, and and we joke about the fact that, I mean, our highest mountain is not very high, so some other places and the elevation that we've explored in just the last couple of weeks has just blown my mind, and my body's been like, what are you doing? This feels very strange.
Right.
I mean, like I said earlier, new places, adventures, it really just, gives you that fresh perspective. And I mean, Australia's big, US is huge, so the diversity to this country and the things that we could explore, that's really kind of what's in my mind now. I'm like, wow, all these places that we could see and trails that we can run, and maybe animal encounters we haven't had yet.
Right.
It's just very, very, very exciting to explore new places. My challenge in my mind is I want to explore Australia and America at the same time, which you can't do. But I definitely see in the near future, a sort of blend between, our own travels at home and spending more time here. Because, wow, there's some amazing places to see.
So I've developed a Facebook Marketplace problem. And there's something called a Tundra, and it's got a Toyota badge on it, but it's good. It's a big truck.
Yeah, could be a second vehicle in a different country coming up.
Jokes aside, definitely. I think there's the childhood nostalgia, the food and but there's a music thing too. There's so many bands here, and there's a scene that we just don't get back home in Australia because it's just so far away.
Yeah.
So a lot of the blues bands I love, a lot of the guitarists I love, bluegrass, the folk, the funk bands, they just don't make it over. And so there's an element of that I'd love to indulge in.
Right.
And then from a creative perspective, like this is the light and the colors that we've seen in the last 3 weeks that I've been looking at on the internet, and it's like, and I've seen it in real life.
Yeah.
And it's got me fired up.
Right.
It's like, I've never seen leaves that color, yellow or pink or orange. I've never seen a mountain with snow on it that's like got pinkish hue from the setting sun. I've seen it on the internet, but I've never seen it in real life. Well, now I have, and now I want to see it again.
Yeah.
And like, and I also think my eyes have been opened up to the sheer size and variety of the states, even within this little corner. I say little, like we drove a long way, but within this corner of Utah and Colorado, we've just seen so much.
Yeah.
And that's just within the corners of 2 states, and there's 50 of them.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot to do.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to get started.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, final parting thought here. Having been through the different chapters that you've experienced, and you kind of asked me this same question in the movie that you're going to be putting together about us. So I'm going to flip it back on you. If there was something that you could tell Antony and Emma when they were about to start out on their journey, a piece of advice or a lesson learned or something to remember as they move forward, what would that piece of advice be?
Ooh. Oh, that's a good one.
You really turned the tables on that one, didn't you?
Yeah.
How the turns of tables.
Shouldn't have asked you so many difficult questions. Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me personally, it would be definitely to try, even though it's hard, to be more present. Yeah. My biggest challenge is I'm always, if I do this, this, and this, what's that outcome? Or if I choose this road or that road, what's going to happen? And if I look back on all those years, I think that robbed me of a lot of time, So I think for me, it would be just, even if it's a tough period, just try and enjoy the small things within that chapter that we're in, which is now why I reflect and I think about them as chapters, because I think being present would be my advice to myself.
I think I would, to echo Emma's thought, I would tell myself, like, you're okay. So much of my decisions and drive was driven by angst and insecurity. The whole travel's it's my answer.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, despite everything we've talked about tonight and the tiny violin sort of story, like despite all, I wouldn't change it because it's led us here, and everything we've learned through that whole process, I wouldn't want to not learn. But if I could go back and just like put my hand on my own shoulder and just be like, you're all right, but like, you're okay.
Yeah.
You got this.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. And then I would do it all over again because I would still get to sit here with you guys.
I appreciate that. Again, thank you guys so much for saying yes to the What If. Thank you so much for traveling with us. And I can't stress enough how much chaos these guys have been through to continue to go with us for over 2 weeks through Utah and Colorado and some of our favorite trails. And it's been an absolute pleasure working with you and filming with you and chatting with you and just sharing a trail with you. That's what we love the most about what we do. And you're both shining examples of the community that's made us fall in love with this pastime to start with. And so we appreciate you. We really do. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this Campfire Confession podcast.
Confessed a bit.
That's it. Yeah. Before we pop off, for folks who are curious about not only your videos but also your music, where can they find that?
Oh yeah, just at We Will Roam on any of the things.
Mm-hmm.
The YouTube videos are up there, Instagram, Spotify even got an EP up on there.
Awesome.
And to hark back to your question on what's next, like there'll be a lot more of that, a lot more to come.
Awesome.
A lot more music, a lot more videos, just sharing what we love without any particular specific intent in mind other than the love of sharing. So at We Will Roam.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, safe travels back to Australia for Emma, and safe travels to you to Alaska with the XO crew, and continuing to expand all of your filmmaking and creativity. So
thanks for having us, man.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Until next time, stay curious.